So let's talk about T1 and Dom1 quickly, the other two teams.
Yes.
Because, like, to your point, Ox, I want to bring this back around. You mentioned, Caitlyn Lux is possibly being a strong lane with the changes they made to lane swaps and the turret meta. We'll get who remind me who the best Caitlyn Lux team is in the world. Like, are we saying that T1's running it back for the back-to-back?
I honestly think that the meta is like so unbelievably good for them. They couldn't have asked for it better. I mean, again, we haven't seen pro play on this patch, so this is just what I think. But like, a lot of things got nerfed out. From what I've heard, it's more like these mages in the mid lane. It's more like these facilitators. It's more things like, seeing a bit of Syndra, Liz, Ari. You have junglers that pair up with that. Things like Viego, Ona's fantastic Viego. And I honestly think that, like, lane swaps, I think T1 are the team who suffered most in the world from lane swaps being a thing. So just them being gone, and based on what I've heard from, like, people in scrims, like, some people have tried, like, really short lane swaps, but it's like, if you're slightly too long, you can just lose, like, 4 or 5 plates.
Yeah,
like the whole
like
tower.
a level 2, like to level 2 or level 3 lane swap, right? Like that should still be somewhat possible, maybe.
It's that's the thing. I've heard it's risky. It's possible, but like the other team are ready for it, and they're like, okay, we're just gonna 4v0. We have like 2 or 3 demolishes. You'll lose your whole tower, and the game's over. So I think T1 have everything they need. I think it's a blessed meta for them, and it just comes to like whether they can like step up and show the level of play that's needed. Like, I don't think it's like, oh, that means T1 are favors to win worlds or anything, but I think they high rolled there, and I also think that is kind of applicable to Dplus as well. Because, like, Showmaker never really felt too comfortable, I feel like, on the AD mids. Like, even when everyone else was playing AD mids, he was playing more of the AP mids. He was wanting to play things like LeBlanc. And, like, the Storm Surge buff is, like, fantastic for LeBlanc. It's fantastic for Syndra. Showmaker notoriously a really good Syndra.
I also think one of the problems, Ox, that Dplus is like the most one-dimensional of all the fucking Asian teams. They just play. They're so obvious who they play through, how they play, what they want to draft, right? I mean, if that isn't the only angle, this is one thing I don't know if you could confirm. People were saying something like maybe they're actually going to play Kellen instead of Moham now. That can't be real, is it? Is that just something nonsense that's all made up? Is that like a real rumor?
I haven't heard it.
Because I hope that's not true.
It was kind of weird, like the change from Kellen to Moham, because we didn't really get any explanation for that, really. And you can understand when a player's like, I know Kellen has issues. Like, I'm not going to sit here and be a Kellen defender, but it was like things were going pretty good, and then they just subbed in Moham, and we got no context at all. And we're like, well, I guess I don't know. Maybe I think it was like champion pool issues, because Kellen seemed like he was kind of limited in what he could play well, and like the draft was suffering. But still, it felt like kind of wild just to sub Moham in when things were generally going okay. But yeah, I feel like Dplus as a team, like, Aiming had such a fantastic season, but I also think like Aiming has his picks where he's like insane on, and like if it's like the right meta for him, he is just going to take over games.
He wasn't as good in playoffs, was he? He was just kind of chilling a bit.
Yeah, but I think it's like, I've always characterized Aiming as being like, if he's on his picks with the dash, picks where he can go aggressive, picks like Zeri, Kai'Sa, Ezreal, like, to me, if he's on those, he's fantastic. But if you stick Aiming in like a Jinx Aphelios meta, I do not think he
was surprisingly good on the Ziggs, though. Like, that actually was really shocking to me, especially his satchel use was quite unique. Like, his Ziggs play is very unique, the way that he was playing it, the way he was trying to like engage with satchel and create picks. I don't see many other players doing that. I thought it was really well done.
Yeah, I've played a lot of Ziggs in the past, and I've been quite vocal about Ziggs. And because one of the things with Ziggs is like, it used to be you max W second, because it was like really consistent damage. Because you throw the W, they can't dodge it. Everything else in Ziggs is skill shots. And then they changed it, so now you max E second. So all the pros, when a pick comes to the meta, they just follow what everyone else does. They max E second. But the amount of like bot laners who I would see playing Ziggs, and they launch the satchel at a target and pop it instantly, and not like Aiming, like knocking them back, just like, oh, let's do my DPS combo. They throw the satchel, they press W, and then an Aatrox turns up next to them, and they have no safety. Criminal, like some of the play we saw from some of the Ziggs. But I agree. I think Aiming was actually pretty good in it, which was surprising. But I still feel like with how the team has played around him, and like it's kind of been like funnel Aiming has been like the MO for such a long time. Yeah. I think he looks so much better when he's on picks that like, if you get momentum in a fight, he just takes over. And like the eye he has on picks, like particularly I think Kai'Sa and Zeri, for when to go in is really like just top of the game. So if you have a meta where those picks are viable, which I feel like maybe if we see like the Kate Lux being strong, that could be a problem. But who really knows? Like, so many AD carries have been nerfed, but I think that was something they struggled with in playoffs because I think they would have much rather been able to just. And to be honest, I'm gonna say it, I don't know why they just didn't. Like, I feel like teams are so much like, oh, this is the meta, we have to play this, and sure, like it might be a bit worse, but like this is an issue with. I know this team didn't make Worlds, but B&K Fear X, we saw them have such an upsurge in the regular season when they played like dive comps, and their whole thing was like they had this Zeri, Ari, Vi like trio, and I was like, oh, this works for them, this suits this team, and then they just stopped playing it. And I'm like, okay, I mean, I know some of these picks have been nerfed, but you look lifeless without that. And I think teams just like so many try to be like, oh, Genji are doing this, we have to be Genji light. But if you're Genji light, you're not going to beat. Well, I guess Hanwha did, and they're Genji light, so I guess that analogy doesn't hold up anymore. But like generally speaking, like if you just copy the best team, they're going to be better at that strategy than you. You need to approach it with like what style actually works for you. And I think Dplus kind of got lost a little bit trying to chase the meta instead of doing what worked for them.
Well, I mean, if the LeBlanc and if LeBlanc and Syndra get stronger, though, like, is this a great patch for a Showmaker? Is the next question, because like we saw him, the LeBlanc was kind of his signature pick even when it was fringe meta throughout these playoffs.
Yeah, I think like the Storm Surge buffs, like Luden's Storm Surge is such a strong 2-item spike. Like has 15 pen now, like Sork Shoes and Storm Surge, you have 30 pen. You have like the Luden's proc and the Storm Surge proc. I legit think you're gonna have games where like LeBlanc's on 2 items, pops over wall, Yeti carry's gone. And it's just like it's not even like you have to like you normally have to be a bit fed to do that. But like LeBlanc's now have been going like Horizon focus, which just it does nowhere near as much damage as Storm Surge now. And like the trade-off is like you lose a bit of ability haste, which he doesn't care about that much, for just flat magic pen. It's like it's such a good trade-off. So I mean, I've heard because Syndra got like a buff to her ult damage, but it was really small. But apparently, like in the in-houses and stuff, people have been playing Syndra with Storm Surge. It's been I think LeBlanc's going to come in, and I really hope we see, because I think any tournament where Showmaker has picks that are good for him and he's playing well is a more exciting tournament. Because I think like he's definitely a player who's like mood shifts with like maybe how his team's doing or the meta. When he's having a good time, when he's dialed in, he's just such a pleasure to watch.
There's two things scare me though about Dplus, and they're at the top side of the map. One, their jungler is a rookie. That's already a factor. Like I'm always a bit nervous about that. And then even though I'll give him credit, he did have a glow up this summer. Kinging is still kinging at the end of the day. Like he is going to be going against like Bin, 369, like some fucking Zeus, Keen. These are some Smurf players, mate. Like he's in a tough spot. He better have amazing worlds if they want to do something.
I feel like Kingen kind of has a similar thing to Thorin, where it's just like no matter how good they're playing, I'm always a bit like, yeah, but still, still Kingen, still Thorin,
For it to kick in. Yeah,
there's just moments where it comes out where I'm like, oh man, that's you're like, wait, maybe things have same.
By the way, the Thorin analogy is so on point because I always defend Thorin when people say shit, because he isn't. And in fact, last year I thought he was amazing going into Worlds. But the problem is, at the same time, if I built him up and defended him, if at the end you were like, right, it's Thorin against Bin, gun to your head, you die if you picked up. Well, I'm picking Bin all day long, aren't I? There's not even a universe where I'm crafting the Thorin angle. I won't let you hate on him, but I also do agree he's not on the same level. Of course not. Of course not.
I feel like it's like even in the finals, like there was that Camille game.
Yes.
I find it like to some degree, I find it amazing. Just the ability.
He thought he was still on Genji. He was still. What the fuck was that? I know.
Just the ability of this player is to like be rock solid mentally, where like he'll just sprint a game down and just be unfazed. But like there were so many Thorin moments, like more so last year, where like he'd be winning and then he'd just get solo killed, and I'm like, why? Where did that come from? I don't know. He's fun player to watch, and he's definitely. At his best, he's fantastic, but you will simultaneously see his best and worst in a series. And he may win that series, but he's still going to have games where you're like, what are we... I mean, even, what's the big one? Remember, I think last year in spring when Pays won MVP of the finals and everyone said it should have been Thorin. And I still get grief from this from some of my co-workers, like Wolf, because I voted Pays, and everyone was like, no, it should have been Thorin. He made the big carry. And you know what my thing was? I just couldn't remember. I just couldn't get out of my mind. He was playing Jace, and he got solo killed by Zeus' Scion. Right. And I'm just like, even when he has a series where everyone's like, this was such a fantastic series, he can't help it. And he just can't help just run it down occasionally. It's like how he's wired.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.